Hello, and welcome to this training session on completing an application to the Mother and Baby Institutions Payment Scheme. You're all very welcome today to this training session. Applications to the scheme can appear daunting, and many people express a very real fear that completing an application can be re-traumatizing. One of the aims of the session is to inform people about how to complete the form and make it less daunting. This session is also aimed at advice and support workers who may support former residents of mother and baby or county institutions. This session should help you prepare in order to make completing an application as smooth as is possible. This is the first of a two-part training session. The second half of the training will be delivered by Barnardo's Ireland. They will be talking about trying to contact family members through the Irish Birth Information and Tracing Service, introduced under the Birth and Tracing Act. We would like to thank them for facilitating today's session. This information session is being run by Fréa, Renewing Roots, Coventry Irish Society Midlands Irish Survivors Service, and London Irish Centre Survivors Integrated Service. Each part of the training will last for about 45 minutes, and there will be a 10-minute Q&A at the end of each of these parts. The presenters, that is myself, Patrick Rogers from Fréa Renewing Roots, Sean from London Irish Centre, and Manisha from Coventry Irish Society will remain visible on screen during the webinar, but no one else will be. The preferred option for viewing is Speaker View. You can do this by clicking on the options on the top right corner and pick Speaker View. This will allow participants to only see the main speaker and the webinar content as opposed to all of the panelists, which may block some of your view. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box and we will endeavour to answer them as part of the Q&A. If there are any questions that we cannot answer today, we will email everyone the answers. Any comments and questions will remain anonymous. You can take our contact details to contact us directly and ask any questions that occur subsequent to the webinar. Please note that this session is being recorded so that it can be uploaded to YouTube at a later date. There is a considerable amount of information being packed into today's session. Do not feel that you have to absorb it all in one go. The information can be complex due to its nature. However, once this webinar is uploaded to YouTube, we will let you know via email so that you can revisit the session if you want to check on any details. We understand that many people have strong opinions on the structure of the Mother and Baby Institutions Payment Scheme. However, we would ask people to remember that this session is a factual explainer of how to complete and submit an application. And a quick note on language. This training caters for anyone applying to the payment scheme, for themselves or on behalf of someone either living or deceased. When making an application, the Payment Scheme Office will use the word applicant when referring to the person who was in the Mother and Baby Institution, that being yourself, your mother, your father, or other relative or friend that was in an institution, or a client whom you are supporting. Applications to the payment scheme can be made in one of three ways. For yourself, or where you are acting on behalf of someone where there is a formal support arrangement in place, or when you are acting as a personal representative for a deceased applicant where the death occurred after the 13th of January 2021. So some background on the payment scheme. The Mother and Baby Institution Payment Scheme opened in March 2024 and is an important measure in the action plan for survivors and former residents of mother and baby in county institutions, published by the Government of Ireland in November 2021 in response to Ireland's legacy in relation to these institutions. The payment scheme will remain open for applications until March 2029. The scheme uses time spent in an institution as a way to calculate payments, so that a person does not have to bring forward evidence of abuse or harm. These payments work on a sliding scale, increasing depending on how long a person was in an institution. Payments begin at €5,000 for those who spend at least one night in an institution as a mother, and €12,500 for those who spent time in these institutions as a child for at least 180 days. The highest payment is €128,000 for mothers who were in some institutions for 10 years or more. The payment scheme is made up of three elements: a general payment, which people can apply for if they were in a mother and baby or county institution; a work-related payment, which is available for mothers who are in a county institution, the Bon Secours institution at Tuam or at Sean Ross Abbey to recognise commercial work undertaken without pay; health supports. These come in the form of a medical card for people living in the Republic of Ireland, or a one-off payment of €3,000 for people living outside the state towards their individual health needs. Eligibility to apply to the payment scheme. There are a couple of terms that we will use for clarity, I will explain these before we start. Firstly, a scheduled institution. This is one of 44 mother and baby or county institutions that former residents can make an application to the payment scheme for. These are listed on the payment scheme website, in the information booklet, and on the application form. Secondly, a relevant person. A relevant person is someone who is in a scheduled institution for at least one night as a mother or as a child. For mothers, this is for reasons relating to pregnancy and the birth of a child. For a child, this is where they were admitted to an institution for reasons other than the above. So a person only has to have spent one night in an institution to meet the definition of being a relevant person under the payment scheme. However, in terms of being eligible for an offer from the payment scheme, there are separate criteria for those who spent time as a mother or as a child. As a mother, the criteria is that you have to have spent at least one night in a scheduled institution for reasons related to pregnancy to be eligible for an offer from the payment scheme. Those who spent time as a child must have been admitted to and resident in the institution for at least 180 days to receive an offer from the payment scheme. If an applicant was admitted to an institution under the age of 18 for reasons related to pregnancy, the payment scheme will recognise the applicant as a mother. Next, on to applications on behalf of a relevant person who passed away after the state apology on the 13th of January 2021. If someone passed away after 13th of January 2021, this is an application can be made if someone is a personal representative. The legislation for the payment scheme requires that these applications must be made by a personal representative. The personal representative is the executor of a deceased person's will, if they made one, or the administrator if they did not make a will. The administrator is usually decided by succession law. So if a deceased person has a surviving spouse, then that person is the one entitled to become the administrator, or if not, the surviving child, and so on. Usually it is necessary for the local probate office to establish who the administrator is. However, you can make an application to the payment scheme, and this application will be processed up to the point of making an offer by providing the following supporting documents. In all cases, a certified copy of the death certificate and a certified copy of the ID for the person making the application. Where a deceased person made a will, a copy of the will proving that you are the executor. Where the deceased person did not make a will, you will need to provide an affidavit stating that you are entitled to act as a personal representative in respect of the deceased person. That means that you believe that there is no one with greater or equal entitlement than you under succession law to administer the deceased person's estate. In the event that there are others with equal status, i.e. multiple executors or siblings with the same right to be an administrator, the Payment Office will also request that you provide a letter from the other parties stating that they nominate you to make the application on behalf of the late applicant. If this letter can't be provided, the payment scheme will proceed with the application by the first person to come forward. It is important to note that if you are not the personal representative, then you cannot make an application to the payment scheme on behalf of a deceased person. An example of this is where a person has made a will and named their executor, but you are the beneficiary of the will. While you will ultimately receive an offer in the end, it still must be the executor who applies to the payment scheme. Where a person applies and it is clear that they are not the personal representative, the application cannot proceed. If an offer is made from the payment scheme, before the payment can be issued, the payment scheme office will require additional proof that that the person applying is the personal representative. Depending on the circumstances and the value of the offer, this will be one of the following. Firstly, a grant of probate, where the deceased person made a will, or a letter of administration, where the deceased person did not make a will. Alternatively, a personal representation declaration form, where the Chief Deciding Officer has decided that they are waiving the requirement to either of the above. If this requirement is being waived, the Chief Deciding Officer will write to the personal representative to tell them of this. If a person died before the 13th of January 2021 and an application is submitted to the payment scheme on their behalf, it will be deemed ineligible and a letter will be issued to the personal representative to say this. We now move on to support applications. An application can be made to the payment scheme on behalf of a person where there is a formal arrangement in place. For these applications, you need to provide a copy of the formal legal arrangement you have that gives you the authority to act on behalf of an applicant. You will see examples of these formal arrangements on the application form that are relevant to applicants living in the Republic of Ireland. For example, a decision-making representative or a ward of court. In the UK, this will be an enduring power of attorney, lasting power of attorney, or a court-appointed deputyship. If you live outside these areas, please check with the Payment Scheme Office to see what legal arrangements and documents are required. The application form specifies that support applications from outside the Republic of Ireland should be accompanied by proof of the legal arrangement from that state. The payment scheme will examine this document to ensure that it provides the required authority and will contact you if there are any issues. Next, we move on to work-related payments and health support payment elements of the payment scheme. You are eligible for a work-related payment if you were in a county home or the Bond Secures institution at Tuam or Sean Abbey for 90 days or more, for reasons relating to pregnancy or the birth of your child. These payments also work on a sliding scale, depending on how long a person was in an institution, of between €1,500 up to €60,000 for those who were in for 10 years or more. You are eligible for health supports if you spent 180 days or more in any of the institutions. That is a medical card for people who are resident in the Republic of Ireland, or a payment of €3,000 for people resident outside the state. A person who has received health supports under the Magdalene Restorative Payment Scheme is not eligible to receive health supports under the scheme, either a medical card or health support payment. If you feel that you may be still eligible for the payment scheme, it's important to complete and submit an application. We also feel it's very important that people who do not meet these criteria, that this is not the end of their engagement. In the UK, Renewing Roots, Coventry Irish Society and the London Irish Centre are recording details of people whom we support who are ineligible for payments from the scheme so that accurate records can be built up of both the numbers and impact of not being eligible. There is further support available for people who are in institutions beyond that of the payment scheme, such as free counselling. We will now show two videos, one on completing an online application to the payment scheme, followed by one on completing a paper application. This will be followed by Manisha from Coventry Irish Society talking about identification requirements. Garamaya.
The Mother and Baby Institutions Payment Scheme is now open for applications. The payment scheme provides financial payments and health supports to people who spend time in mother and baby and county home institutions in Ireland. There is a straightforward application process for those who wish to apply, and you can do so online or using a paper version of the form. The quickest and easiest way to apply is through the dedicated online portal. This video will talk you through that process. The online portal can be accessed from the home page of the payment scheme website, www.gov.ie/payment scheme. Once you click the portal link, you will need to register an account. To do this, simply click on the Register button. You'll then be brought to this page, where you will need to enter your email, a chosen username, and a password. Once you've registered, you can proceed to start your application. Someone can apply to the scheme on their own behalf, as a support person who has a formal arrangement in place to act on behalf of someone who may be eligible for the payment scheme, or as a personal representative on behalf of the estate of a deceased person who died on or after 13th of January 2021. After registration, you can start your application by selecting the relevant application type that you wish to submit. The online form is a step-by-step process. At any stage, you can save your application and return to it later. In the first section of the application, you will need to fill in your contact information, such as name, phone number, and address. You'll then need to complete information on the person who spent time in an institution covered by the scheme. This may be yourself or someone you're making an application on behalf of. In order to complete this section, you'll need to choose the name of the institution or institutions from a drop-down list. You will also be asked to provide an indication or your best estimate of the dates of arrival to and departure from the institution or institutions. We understand that not everyone will know exact arrival and departure dates, so if this is the case, don't worry. Following this, you'll need to select which benefits you're applying for under the scheme. Further information on the eligibility criteria for each of these is available at gov.ie/payment scheme. You can then complete your bank account details if you wish to do so. However, if you'd prefer, you can provide this information at a later stage. In addition to the application form, you will be asked to upload some supporting documentation. For most people, this will mean uploading a certified copy of a valid photo identification. There will be further documentation required in certain circumstances. This will be clearly set out on the portal if it is required. Once you've completed all sections, you will be taken to a screen which contains a declaration. Please read this carefully, and then, once you're happy, sign within the box on this screen. You can then click on Submit to submit your application to the Payment Scheme Office. Your application will then be checked, and any queries or updates will be sent to you through the portal. Full information on all of the steps in the application process is available at gov.ie/payment scheme. If you have questions at any stage, you can contact the Payment Scheme Office through the portal or by phone on +353 1 522 9992.
Welcome folks. This video is designed to gently guide you through the paper-based application for the Mother and Baby Institutions Payment Scheme. This is a short demonstration, not a full walkthrough, and should be used alongside the official Payment Scheme Information Booklet, which explains eligibility, definitions and requirements in full. This guide has been developed by Fréa Renewing Roots, the London Irish Centre and Coventry Irish Society, all of whom offer free support and advice for former residents living in Britain. For the purpose of this demonstration, we'll be completing the form as though we are the person who spent time in the institution. You'll see an example on screen using a fictional applicant named Mary O'Connor. Mary's details are used throughout to help illustrate what to fill in and where. Section 1.1. This section asks, who is completing the application? There are three options. Tick the first box if you're applying for yourself, that is, you spend time in a scheduled institution as a mother or child. Tick the second box if you're applying on behalf of someone who is still alive and you hold legal authority to act, such as a lasting power of attorney or court deputyship. Formal legal arrangement must be in place. Legal authority from the UK or other countries is valid as long as documentation is included. If you're unsure whether your document qualifies, you can contact the Payment Scheme Office or one of the support organisations for advice. Tick the third box if you're applying on behalf of someone who has died on or after the 13th of January 2021. You must be their personal representative. That means the executor of their will or the administrator of their estate if there's no will. If more than one person has legal authority, a letter from the others nominating you to act should be included. Once you've selected the appropriate option, move on to Section 1.2. Section 1.2. Here you add your own contact details, name, address, phone number and email. This is how the payment scheme will contact anyone submitting a paper application. Please write carefully using block capitals and a blue or black pen. In Mary's case, she's applying for herself, so her own details are entered here. If you're applying as a support person and tick box 2 in Section 1.1, you must also complete Section 1.2.1 with your contact details. Section 1.2.1 is skipped if you're applying for yourself or for someone who has died after the 13th of January 2021. In Section 2.1, you enter the details of the person who spent time in the institution. In her case, that's Mary. This includes the full name, any other names they were known by, their date of birth, and their own maiden name. If you're unsure what name you were using at the time, enter what you were known by and include any additional names in the relevant section. This can help the Scheme Office locate the correct records. Section 2.2. This section is where you record your time, or the applicant's time, in one or more scheduled institutions. Before completing it, look at the list of eligible institutions in the form. If the institution isn't listed, it isn't part of the scheme. Some people may have spent time in more than one place, for example, entering a mother and baby home and later being moved to a county home. Others may have returned to the same institution at a different stage in life. Section 2.2.1 is for time spent as a mother, while Section 2.2.2 is for time spent as a child. In Mary's example, she spent time in a mother and baby home as a young mother. There's also a space to include any extra details or memories that could help the Scheme Office locate your records. For example, the name of the ward that you stayed in, an approximate birth date of your child, the name of a person who maybe visited you. These are optional, but often helpful. If more space is needed, attach an additional page. Section 3. Here you tick what types of support you're applying for. Firstly, general payment. Tick this if you spent at least one night as a mother or 180 days as a child in a listed institution. Then we have work-related payment. Tick this only if you spent at least 90 days in Tune Mother and Baby Institution, Sean Ross Abbey or any county home. No other institutions are eligible for this payment. Thirdly, health supports. If you spent at least 180 days in one or more institutions, you may be eligible for a medical card. If you live outside of Ireland, this may be a one-off €3,000 health support payment. For Section 3.1, you must declare if you've received a court settlement for the same time period. This might affect your eligibility. For example, If you sued the Irish state and received a payment for your time in the institution, you must tick yes. In section 3.2.3, you must declare if you've already received health supports under the Magdalene scheme. If you received a special medical card under that scheme, you may not be eligible for another health support under this scheme. Tick what applies and leave any sections blank if you're unsure. The scheme office will review everything. Section 4. Checklist and supporting documents. The documents you send will depend on your situation. For most applicants, include a certified copy of your ID, for example your passport or driving licence, and a proof of address dated within the last 6 months, for example a utility bill. A certified copy is a photocopy of your ID that's been signed and stamped by someone authorised to confirm it's genuine. You do not need to pay a solicitor. Many community groups can do this free of charge. The official scheme booklet lists other people who can certify, such as GPs, teachers, ministers of religion, social workers, or community support workers. If you're applying as a support person, include a certified copy of the legal arrangement, for example, power of attorney or court deputyship, a certified ID for both people, proof of address for the person that you're applying for, optionally, a doctor's letter if the person is terminally ill, and also bank details if known and ready. If you're applying on behalf of someone who has died, include a certified death certificate, proof that you are the personal representative, for example, grant of probate or the letter of administration, your own certified ID, and bank details for the estate account. Bank details. The account must be in the correct legal name of the applicant or the estate. Accept electronic fund transfers or ETFs in euro and have no cap or limit on incoming amounts. If you're unsure whether your account can receive euro payments or whether there's a transaction limit, contact your bank before including the details. If you live in Ireland, you'll provide your sort code and account number. If in the UK or elsewhere, you may be asked for an IBAN, a BIC or SWIFT code, or routing numbers. If you're unsure, ask your bank or reach out to your local support organisation. Remember, send certified copies only, never originals. Section 5. Declaration and signature. Tick the relevant declaration box. 5A if you're applying for yourself. 5B if you're applying as a support person. 5C if you're applying for someone who has died. Sign and date the form. Optionally, tick the box if you're willing to be contacted for feedback later. Send in your application. Post the completed form and certified copies of documents to the Payment Scheme Office, PO Box 13668, Waterford, Ireland. There is no upload or email option. Paper applications must be sent by post. Once received by the Scheme Office, you'll receive an acknowledgement letter with a reference number. Keep that number safe. That's it, folks. Your paper application is complete. This is more than just paperwork. It may bring up difficult feelings, memories, or questions. If that's true for you, please know you're not alone. Fréa Renewing Roots, the London Irish Centre, and Coventry Irish Society offer free and confidential support across Britain, and we're here to help. For official questions about the scheme, like eligibility or next steps, you can contact any of these organisations or the Payment Scheme Office directly. Contact information is on the screen. Thanks for watching, folks. Take care for now.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Manisha O'Malley and I run the Midlands Irish Survivors Service, which is based at Coventry Irish Society. So I'm going to talk a bit about identification requirements first. The payment scheme requires all applicants to provide one form of photographic ID. In a support application where you are applying on behalf of someone else and there is a formal arrangement in place, for example, somebody who holds lasting power of attorney, certified photo ID will be required for both the applicant and the support person. For estate cases on behalf of a deceased person, photo ID is required for the personal representative. So eligible forms of ID include certified copies of any of the following. So we've got a passport, a driving licence, any government issue photo ID, and a public services card for those living in Ireland or the equivalent in whatever location you may be in. Applicants living in Ireland can also use a free travel pass, which is issued by the Department of Social Protection. This is also accepted by the payment scheme. So there may be certain circumstances where an applicant doesn't have access to one of the forms of ID from the above list. In these cases, those living in the UK will be able to use a bus pass, a blue badge, or a citizen card. And any applicant who doesn't have one of these above forms should contact the National Response Line for further advice. Certifying the identification. So applicants living anywhere must get their photo ID photocopied that is, and certified by an authorised person. And this person will sign their name, print their name and occupation in block capitals, provide the date alongside the signature, provide a stamp or a professional registered number, sorry. This might be found on a letterhead, for example. And they should also provide a contact phone number, and this number has to be a landline number. Now, it should be said applicants are not obliged to notify this person for the reason for the ID being certified or of the nature of the application. So who can certify? Now, for applicants living in the UK, ID can be certified by somebody at their nearest survivor support service. So for those living in the north, this will be Fréa Renewing Roots. Those in the Midlands can contact us at Midlands Irish Survivor Service, and people living in the south can contact London Irish Centre. We can also give free advice and support to anybody who needs it. And in some circumstances, a member of staff might even be able to conduct a home visit to certify your ID or to assist you with the application process. So applicants living in Ireland can get their photo ID cert by people in a range of professions, such as an accountant, a serving member of An Garda Síochána, a member of the clergy, and there's a full list visible on the screen for you now. So applicants living in the UK can get their photo ID certified by those in professions like a solicitor or a teacher. Again, we've got an accountant there as well, a minister of religion, and again, there's a full list on the screen for you now. It should be noted that somebody from your nearest regional support service can certify these documents for you. So those working in professions, in certain professions, can only certify photo ID as long as they are still currently registered and practicing in their profession. So for those living in Ireland and the UK, this will include a dentist, a medical doctor, a nurse, an occupational therapist, physiotherapist, social worker, and speech therapist. So for applicants living anywhere outside of the UK and Ireland, the list is slightly different. So as you can see on the screen there, we've got a serving member of the police force, a medical doctor, a dentist, and a few more there. It should be noted that a notary, a solicitor, or a justice of the peace is also able to certify, regardless of whether they are currently practicing. So providing supporting evidence with your application. Now, applicants are not required to provide records proving time spent in an institution. However, if an applicant has these and would like to provide them, they are able to do so. Those living outside of Ireland who are applying for the health support payment must provide proof of residence. Now, this might be a mortgage agreement, a tenancy or a rent agreement, a letter from the owner, manager of a care home, or a utility bill. And if you're using a utility bill, it must be addressed directly to the applicant themselves. Now, regardless of the type of document used, it has to be dated within 6 months prior to the application being filled out. Those applying on behalf of a former resident who is now deceased must provide a copy of their death certificate. They are also required to provide proof that they are entitled to act on the behalf of the deceased estate. So this might be a letter of administration or a grant of probate. In circumstances where an individual is applying in the capacity of a support person of a former resident, i.e. a person who has the legal right to act on behalf of a former resident, there are different requirements. So in these cases, this person must submit evidence of this arrangement. Now, this can be an authenticated copy of a decision-making representation order, a court order, or an enduring power of attorney agreement. Now, the payment scheme will also accept any other legal document which proves the equivalent of this arrangement in any other jurisdiction. How many applications should I make? So the payment scheme only allows one application per individual. The only exception to this is in circumstances where an applicant is applying for themselves and also on the behalf of the deceased estate. If that's a deceased relative and they're applying on behalf of their estate, and if they are the personal representative. Applicants must include all information on time spent in any institution in the same application. This must include the name of the institution, as well as the dates at which the applicant entered and left the institution. If an applicant doesn't know the exact dates, they should give their best estimation, even if this is approximate. So this still applies in circumstances where a former resident has spent time in different institutions, where a former resident has spent time in an institution as a mother and as a child, and where time was spent in the same institution but at different periods of time. So the rules regarding gaps in residency. In circumstances where an applicant spent time in an institution as a child and as a mother, these periods are treated separately when determining the amount of general payment or work-related payment the applicant is entitled to. However, time spent as a mother and as a child will be added together to establish if an applicant is entitled to health support. So in these cases, a person must have spent over 180 days in a scheduled institution as a mother and or as a child combined to be eligible. If an applicant is entitled to general payment for time spent as a mother and also general payment for time spent as a child, these will be calculated separately and then added together to make up the total general payment offer. The payment is then completed as one singular transaction, and this is why it is so important that an applicant records and includes on the application any time spent in any institution they were resident in. In cases where a former resident left an institution for a period of time, this will only be taken into account if the applicant left the institution for 180 days or more. For example, if a resident left the institution to go to hospital for 90 days, this is not subtracted from the total number of days, which is used to calculate the payment amount. If the period of absence is less than 180 days, it is known as a temporary absence and it does not need to be noted on the application. In circumstances, I'm in the wrong bit there. There we go. However, this does not apply in cases where there was a gap between periods of time spent in two different institutions. For example, if a former resident had left an institution for 150 days and entered a different institution afterwards, this will be treated as two separate periods of residence.
Hi guys, thanks for that, Manisha. I'm just going to speak now a bit about monitoring emails and replies and also a bit about accepting your quote. I could also remind you guys that we're accepting questions in the Q&A part, so you can just write your questions into the chat at any point and we'll endeavour to answer them on the break. So in regards to emails and replies, when an application is being submitted, it's important to monitor correspondence from the payment scheme office. The emails can be quite hard for some to spot, as they usually come under the heading No Reply CRM, along with a case number and a prompt to check the portal. It's important to monitor these emails, as very often the payment office can come back and request some further information, such as a proof of address or a certified ID. It's through these email prompts that applicants get their notice of the termination, so it's doubly important to monitor inboxes in order to ensure that these are not missed. There is a 180-day window on accepting a notice of termination unless there are mitigating circumstances. It's therefore very important to ensure that applicants to the payment scheme have access to an email account and are confident to access and check the account when making an application. While online applications are the most efficient and cheapest way to ensure that an application is successful, people who have less confidence in accessing emails may benefit from submitting a paper application. Now I'm going to speak about the notice of determination, which is the quote itself. The notice of determination details the decision on your application. That is, what the payment scheme office found following the search of records from details that were submitted on the form. This will either be an offer of a payment or nil. The nil determination may be issued where, for example, the applicant did not meet the 180-day or 6-month criteria for time spent in an institution as a child, or the payment scheme office could not verify the time spent as per the application. For example, if the applicant applied for a scheduled institution on the form, but following a search of records, it was found that there is no record of them being in said institution. As I mentioned, there's a 180-day window to accept an offer made on the notice of determination. If an applicant is unhappy with the decision or disagrees with the outcome, they have 60 days to request a review of the determination. And further, if an applicant is unhappy with the outcome of the review, they have 60 days to request an appeal on the determination. If there's a failure to respond within 180 days to the notice, the applicant will be considered to have rejected the offer. As Manisha has pointed out, the legislation only allows for one application per person. An applicant who receives an offer in their notice will receive a reminder either by letter or through the online portal after 120 days. The notice of determination is quite simply laid out. It opens up with the information that the Chief Deciding Officer or the record searcher has gathered, the number of days spent in an institution, which institutions they were in, followed by an offer in euros for the general payment, and whether there's eligibility for a work payment and or health payment, or those with residence in Ireland, an Irish medical card. In addition to the notice of determination, there's an acceptance form and a legal waiver that needs to be signed if the applicant, their support person, or their personal representative wishes to accept the offer given. If you've completed an online application, you'll need to download the notice of determination, acceptance, and the legal waiver in order to sign and re-upload the document. So the legal waiver states if the applicant accepts a payment, they waive any right of action against a public body relating to their experience in the scheduled institutions. The applicant can choose whether to sign this or not, but if the applicant doesn't want to sign this, they will not receive the offer outlined on the notice, the general or work payment, but they would still be eligible to the health support payment or the medical card. It's important to note that signing a waiver does not prevent you from opening up about your experiences in the institutions or the offer being made from the payment scheme. An applicant has the right to obtain advice from a legal representative before signing a waiver. Financial support up to the value of €500, excluding VAT, is available. This payment will only be made on receipt of proof of payment or an invoice for a solicitor. It can be paid to you directly so that you can reimburse your solicitor, or with written permission, paid directly to the solicitor. Following the legal waiver is the bank details form, in which applicants' bank details must be entered in their own name. In the Republic of Ireland, this is their bank account number and sort code. For people in the UK, this is the IBAN number, international bank account number, and a SWIFT BIC code. These are numbers that allow for the international transfer of money, and they can be found on a bank statement or obtained by contacting the bank. It's important to ensure that the account you nominate for payment can receive an electronic funds transfer in euro, and that there's no cap on the amount of money that can be transferred to the account in one transaction. Some account types, for example, savings accounts, do not allow for a direct funds transfer. Other nations' banking systems require you to submit a routing number or a clearing code. If you're unsure which number that you need to submit, please contact the payment team on 00353 1522 992. Applicants should sign their full names rather than using initials in these sections, as this is required to process the acceptance form. Once the notice of determination acceptance is completed, applicants will either post it back to the payment scheme office or upload it to the portal accordingly. Now I'm going to speak a bit about affidavits. On occasion, where there's insufficient evidence of time spent in an institution, the payment office will request an affidavit. The payment scheme office will speak to you on the phone to explain the information that needs to be included in the affidavit. An applicant can complete this affidavit themselves or get legal representation to help them with this. And it must include the name of the person making the affidavit, the payment scheme application reference number, the name of the applicant if the affidavit is being made by a support person or a personal representative, the occupation and address of the person making the affidavit, a statement that the witness is over 18 years of age, relevant information relating to the residence in a relevant institution or that of the person on whose behalf they're acting, for example, the name of the institution and the believed date of entry and exit, names of staff members, and anything else. The signature of the witness, the date signed, and a jurat, which is a section on the affidavit where the Commissioner for Oaths or practicing solicitor verifies and signs that the affidavit was properly sworn. The affidavit provided will be assessed and a decision will be made on whether, on the balance of probabilities, the applicant was admitted to and spent time in a scheduled institution. Following this, a notice of determination will be issued to the applicant to inform them of the decision. Applicants who need to submit an affidavit can receive €200 for legal support obtained. Payment of this financial support is available on submission of a valid affidavit. To receive this payment, you'll need to submit bank details through a form that will be uploaded to your portal or by filling in and returning a form that will be posted to you if you've completed a paper form. Again, this payment can be made directly to the applicant or to the solicitor with the applicant's permission. Reviews and appeals. So for applicants who are unhappy with the determination made on the application, there's some options. Firstly, they can seek a review of the determination. In some cases, the applicant may dispute the decision they receive. For example, they may state that they were in an institution for more days than is listed on the notice. There is right to review if they were not made an offer from the scheme or if they're not happy with the amount of the offer made. There'll be an opportunity to review all or review part of the offer depending on the applicant's point of view. The request for the review has to be made within 60 days of receiving the notice, and it's done by completing a review request form, which is available online, or by contacting the payment scheme office. If the application has been made online, a review request form is available through the portal. At this stage, the applicant needs to select the reason for this review, complete the form, and is encouraged to provide any evidence they may have. If at this stage the application process, the portal is locked for any new supporting documents, you can contact the payment scheme office. You can reopen the online portal to receive the documents. These documents can also be submitted by post or a dedicated email address. Reviews are examined by a reviewing officer. They will make a decision based on information and evidence provided. Once this decision is made, the applicant will be sent a review notice of determination outlining the decision. If a review is unsuccessful, the applicant can submit an appeal. This needs to be submitted within 60 days of the review notice of determination. Appeals need to be made on a dedicated appeal form, which can be found on the portal for people who have completed online applications or from the payment team if you've made a paper application. The appeal is heard by a panel of independent appeals officers. At this point, any contact that you have regarding your application will be with the appeals officer instead of the payment team. When a decision has been made regarding the appeal, notice of determination will be issued to the applicant regarding the decision. If the applicant still disagrees with the decision at this stage, they can only further appeal to the courts if the appeal is based on a point of law. Many thanks for listening today, and I can take any questions on this subsection towards the end, but for now I'll pass you back to Patrick from Fréa Renewing Roots to introduce the Q&A section. Thank you.
Mila Beaker, Sean. So just say at the moment we don't have any questions in the box. If you do have anything, you can still type in a question quickly and we can look to answer that. In the meantime, I will just say a couple of things. So basically, if you are a potential applicant or a support person, uh, or someone, or a support or advice worker, and you are completing an application form, and there's something that you are a wee bit confused about, something you don't feel is clear on the application form, please feel free to give myself a call on 07432 138 682. You can always ring Sean on 0800 519 5519, and that is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 10 a.m. And you can get in contact with Manisha on 0247 625 6629. And it's important to say that, even if you feel that it's a small matter, if it's something that can hold up an application, it's probably easier just to speak to us, and we can, furnish you with the answers, and then you can move on with the application. That may well make the application form move on a wee bit quicker and more smoothly. Secondly, just a comment that we, will often get from people is that, they will say, "Oh, I don't really want to waste your time." Um, please understand that you are never wasting our time. That if you want information about the payment scheme, and at the end of receiving that information, you decide not to go ahead with an application, that's absolutely fine, as long as you are making an informed decision on what your rights are and what you would have to do in order to complete an application. That's absolutely fine. You will not be wasting our time. Please come speak to us. We're always happy to have a chat, whether it be for 10 minutes or 2 hours. We don't mind. It's what we do. Um, just as well as that, we realised that there is been a lot of information crammed in today, to today's session. We looked at it and we decided that it was all relevant, all very important information, for people to be able to, or for the people need to have in order to make an application or to start making an application. People can look down what's a support application and not really understand that they need a formal arrangement in place in some cases to make make that application. So being able to clear that up was one of the intentions of today's session. As we've said, we're going to put this on YouTube, and we will email everyone out the access details for that. We're hoping to get that timestamp so you don't have to go back through the entire session. You can click on whether you want to have a look at estate applications or support applications, or on affidavits. So all that will be easily accessible, and please do use that facility at a later point. So we still don't have any questions in the box. So what I'm going to do is I will hand back to Manisha now, and just for some closing remarks. Garamila Margaret.
Okay, so as Patrick has just mentioned, obviously we are, the three of us as organisations are always available for people living in the UK that need any kind of advice or support on any of this. So I'd just like to say very quickly, on behalf of my colleagues at Fréa Renewing Roots, London Irish Centre and myself at Coventry Irish Society, I would like to thank everyone for attending today's session. We hope that you've learned from the experience. We would also like to offer huge thanks to Chloe and Celine from Barnardo's Island for hosting today's webinar. We're now going to take a short break, probably about 10 minutes, and then we'll be handing over to our colleagues at Barnardo's who will be discussing family tracing. Godamila Margav, thank you all.
Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody back to the next part of this webinar. So my name is Chloe Chambers. I'm the manager of the Birth History Service with Barnardo's Ireland. Myself and my colleague Celine are going to present to you today on, I suppose, our experience and our learnings on pre-tracing advice and information. This is very much around, I suppose, our experience in the service and individuals that we have worked with, and the learnings around search and reunion. I'd also like to thank our previous speakers, so Patrick, Manisha and Sean, for their input on the redress scheme. So, similarly to as the previous speakers had mentioned, you may have some questions for us throughout this webinar, and please do use the Q&A box for any questions that you may have. You'll see that, as Patrick had mentioned, at the bottom of the screen, there's a little Q&A and a question mark beside it, and what you'll be able to do, you can submit a question anonymously within that box. And if you see a question that's similar to your own question, you'll see there's a little button there that you can press called upvote. And what that will do is that will allow us to see which are the most popular questions. And then at the end, given that we have some time for questions, we'll try to get to the ones with the most upvotes as quick as we can. So please be aware that as we are a support service, we won't be able to answer any questions around TUSLA or the Adoption Authority waiting times, file information or social work allocation, as these questions can only be answered by the relevant body. Some sections of this webinar have a lot of information, so we have some handouts which will be available for you to download throughout the webinar. These will be uploaded into the chat box and you'll be able to download them and save to your computer. I would also like to mention a little bit about language. So the language that's used in this webinar and presentation is based off the language used in the current legislation. We're very much aware of how language and terminology can be very emotive, and we do not wish to cause any upset by the terms used throughout this webinar. So a little bit about Barnardo's Ireland and the Birth History Service. So we've been in operation since 1977. And in 1977, Barnardo set up a post-adoption helpline to support people impacted by adoption. Our current Birth History Service offers one-to-one and group support to adopted adults, birth parents, people whose births were illegally registered, and people who were boarded out as children prior to the Child Care Act 1991. This was also known as nursed out or informally fostered prior to fostering services being developed in Ireland. The Barnardo's Adult Birth History Service spaces are in Dublin, Cork and Galway. However, we offer very much flexible service remotely as well to individuals outside of those centres and internationally. So now we're going to look at some of the concerns or reactions that may arise during or after a search. And again, to mention, these are not to say that they're everyone's experiences, but they're some of the main pieces that we have come to learn throughout our involvement with individuals that have engaged with the service. So, what triggers commence a search? There are many reasons why people start a search. Maybe a natural curiosity to know one's origins. You may have always been aware of a need to search from when you were quite young and had an urge to know your birth parents. Some people will have medical questions that they're looking for answers to. Some may have a significant life event that's coming up, such as a wedding or the birth of a child. Perhaps the death of an adoptive parent can trigger a need to search. Also, media attention relating to adoption can be a trigger. And particularly within recent years where there has been so many commissions of investigations, redress schemes and new legislation, the area of adoption has been quite relevant and quite consistently within the media. Next, we look at what factors are important to consider. Maturity can be a great help, but searching may also be very important to a person as quite a young person and also very relevant for them at that time. A person's adoptive family environment is crucial to consider. Sometimes people have a desire to search, but then pull back out of concern that they may upset their adoptive family. Some adoptive families are hugely supportive and others can be encouraging at the time, but then as the search and trace progresses, may pull back and appear less so. Often reunions are more successful if it's initiated by the adopted person. And the timings of the reunion are set by the adoptive person. So, for example, when perhaps they don't have other life pressures or stressors, such as exams or health issues. Support and preparation prior to searching is essential. People often underestimate the emotional and physical impact of getting information, searching, and reunion. Next, I suppose we look at the adoptive person's emotions and some questions that might be helpful for adopted persons to consider before searching. What am I hoping to get from this process? What might I gain or what might I lose? Will I be welcomed or will I be rejected by birth family members? Will the search impact the lives of my birth parents? Will the search upset my adoptive parents? What if I can't find my birth parents? Or what if my birth parents have died? Some adopted adults wish to learn about their identity and have knowledge of their birth family, even if they are unsure whether they want contact or a relationship with birth relatives. Having emotional support is very, very important at this stage. Birth parents' emotions. And in our experience, birth parents have their own considerations, some which may be similar to that of the adoptive person, but some quite different. A birth parent may need to know if their child is alive and well. They'll have imagined the life that their child will have lived since parting, and that could be very, very important for them. The reality of contact can trigger emotions associated with the original loss for a birth parent. Having awareness of their own expectations is very important as a birth parent. There may be fear around who knows, as secrecy has been a big issue for many birth parents. And there may be other concerns regarding other children, perhaps that were had of a marriage after they had placed a child for adoption. The perspective of birth parents can often be different to that of the adopted adult. And this can be very important to consider. What are the expectations of the relationship? Once again, counselling and support are very, very important at this time. Longer-term scenarios can be hard to imagine. For example, when it comes to family events such as weddings, christenings, and other significant family occasions. I'll now hand you over to my colleague Celine, who's going to take you through some of the next points.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Chloe. It gives you a little break from speaking so far. So what I'm just going to talk about now are adoptive parents' feelings, and to say that almost all adoptive parents consider the search a natural process for the adopted person. Again, as stated previously, it's really helpful, even for the adoptive parents, for them to get support throughout the process. Many adoptive parents can be apprehensive and worry that they may lose their child, as they have raised them and are afraid that they will lose them when they meet their birth parents. Some may see the birth parents who went on to marry as more of a threat or a challenge in relation to the blending of the families. Many adoptive parents feel that the birth parents should not initiate a search, so they really believe that it should be the adoptive person who initiates the search. But that's not the case. Like, birth parents are also entitled to initiate a search. Again, here there are longer term scenarios that are hard to imagine. Like, where do the birth parents fit into our lives when weddings happening, graduations, christening, losses as well too. So there is a real consideration to be made with regards to blending families. So preparation for the first meeting. Ideally, we recommend, and social workers recommend, that you start with an exchange of letters and photos. This can be physically or through email. A good idea, as Chloe will discuss in tips, is to set up a separate email for that communication. Consider before your first meeting, what are the fantasies that you have had all your life with regards to this experience? And you are going to now move closer to the facts. The timing of the first meeting is really important to consider. For example, it's worth asking yourself, what else is going on in my life? For example, have I got exams coming up? Is there a wedding? Am I moving house? Or am I recently bereaved? As this can be a very emotional time. Take the process slowly and don't rush. This is the advice we give to everybody, birth parents and adoptive people alike. Get support before and after your first meeting. Consider what you want to ask or what you want to bring to the first meeting. Some people bring photos or a small gift. So first meetings. The physical presence, being in each other's presence, can be quite overwhelming. Actually meeting face to face for the first time. First meetings can also be anticlimactic. The fantasy may not always meet the reality. People often expect or desire an emotional, physical connection, but that might not be the experience initially. First meetings sometimes bring back a sense of loss from the past and might be very emotionally triggering. Secrecy issues may also arise, as maybe the adopted adult or the birth parent don't want anybody else to know about the meeting, or may not wish to share such personal information initially. Birth parents' needs can sometimes overwhelm an adopted adult. For example, a birth parent may have memories of the adopted adult as a baby. The reunion can bring up a lot of emotions surrounding the experience of the separation for the birth parent and around the adoption. What might happen at a first meeting is that you will learn about siblings, if any, and this is important to consider. Remember, not everything will be answered during the first meeting. It is recommended to accept support from a social worker or bring along a support person who is neutral to the adoption process, a friend or a colleague or somebody who knows your story. By neutral, we mean not the adoptive parent or an adoptive sibling. So there are a number of different possible outcomes with regards to the search and reunion. And here we are sharing some information from PAC UK, a survey that was carried out of 80, and which says that 85% of adopted adults who searched reported that they were really glad that they had searched. Also, the report shows that 40% did not maintain contact beyond 5 years. Adopted adults felt meeting up improved their self-esteem and improved their sense of identity. Some adopted adults reported improved relationships, including with adoptive parents. Some birth parents and birth fathers also welcomed the contact. Some birth mothers, birth fathers and siblings were uncertain about the contact, and some needed more time. Remember that reliving old traumas can slow down the process. People often need to take time to manage their emotions and then move to the next step. Birth mothers or fathers or siblings in your search may be deceased, sadly. A birth mother or father or siblings may refuse contact, and this can be difficult. Also, birth mothers or fathers or siblings may not be found at all. Contact or reunion may never happen. Equally, hopes and expectations may not be met or may not come to fruition. Often, there are post-reunion issues. As I said, expectations may not be matched. There may be a resolution or an understanding of past issues. There may be additional demands on birth parents or adopted adult or on the adoptive parents with this reunion. Support may be required by all parties involved. There may be a blending of identities, and sometimes there are practical constraints such as distance, location, and financial pressures. Some birth parents have different values or lifestyles to their birth children. It is best to remain as honest as possible in all communications. The impact and response of other family members needs to be considered. What we're going to do now is take a look at Darragh O'Brien as he shares his experience of search and reunion.
Then, just as all that's happening on a separate stream, she made contact with my birth mother.
Okay.
And so my birth mother was startled, she said, or a bit surprised after that length of time. Because all I wanted to do basically was to go find out who it was,
Yes.
send them a letter going, look, it was okay. It was grand. I ended up with a lovely family.
Oh,
it's been very, very good.
That's very emotional.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
weird how things, but I remember writing the letter. Just
Yeah.
going, look, there was a separate letter then I had to write going, look, it'd be lovely if we could meet. By the way, when you walk into the room, you may be slightly familiar with my face. and that'd be slightly weird, like whatever. That was a weird thing to get across. Like,
was she living in Ireland?
Yes. So we just said, like, yeah. So there, but it's a. But so we sat. So she came into a room. We in a hotel in Dublin just before the lockdown. Wow. Came into a room and sat across from me, and I would say it was a weird mix of emotions and not emotions. It was kind of like whatever people expect us to be a kind of like whatever. But I have a very happy family life.
I understand.
I'm meeting a stranger essentially. I far know them better since then, but in that moment,
what was it like?
It's very, very weird.
Locking eyes with her. What was that like?
But it's not like people presume that suddenly all the questions will be answered, and they'll look just like something out of a kid's book. They'll look exactly like you, or whatever, and they're actually I've always been into maths or whatever. Any question I ever had about things I was
she's
really
gas.
into. That's gas. That she'd like it'd be a 6'4" bald woman, who'd be carrying a telescope and going, what? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's great. Really, all the questions you think it answers, it doesn't answer.
No.
It doesn't answer. I mean, there is a photograph of her father, and I think he looks a lot like me, which was a bit weird.
Amazing.
But actually, we had this kind of a slightly, I wouldn't say awkward thing, but it was, the most honest thing I'd say is that there was a point because it felt like this is significant, but yet I don't know this person, and I'm sure she was going through the same things.
Strange thing.
That I found myself on the other side of it, and when we were parting after the couple of hours of talking, I found myself standing behind one of these I don't know whether to hug her or not.
Yes.
I don't know what that is, and in the end it did, and I remember catching hold of myself going, get out from behind the table.
Yeah.
Like my own parents going, go, no, hug her. I did it to myself.
Wow.
Go out and think, I gave her a hug. And then lockdown occurred, but we kept up contact on phones and all that, like whatever. And actually, that probably gave time for everything to breathe and normalise. And then when lockdown lifted, I went back over and I met sisters and a brother.
Wow.
And all that. And it was
what a
lovely.
story! What a story! Congratulations!
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing it. That's an amazing story.
Okay, so now we're going to look at some tips for search and reunion. This slide will be available as a handout, and Selena's going to pop it into the chat box there for anyone who'd like to download it. So I suppose some of the main takeaways based on our experience around search and reunion would be to really ensure you're practicing self-care and have your own support throughout the process. And the main, I suppose, ways that we will look at this in a little bit more detail as we go on into the presentation. If you decide to search for your birth family members through social media, please do so with caution. Do not befriend or exchange contact details with another person until you feel safe to do so. Set up a separate email address for all correspondence related to your search. This will be helpful in allowing you to have some control, as in when you access that email, when you maybe choose to take a little break or put it on pause. Take time before disclosing where you live and make sure you feel completely comfortable in doing so before telling someone your address. It's important to remember that once you disclose this type of information, you can't take it back. And finally, research indicates that the majority of people who engaged in a search, regardless of the outcome, felt better for the process. Next, we have a clip from a podcast called Growing Stronger Together. That was a publication, an audio documentary that us within the Birth History Service in Barnardos, Ireland, would have put together with the collaboration of stories provided by 14 birth mothers sharing their experience of adoption and support which they received from Barnardos. The full version of this can be found on the Barnardos website, the Barnardos Ireland website. The sound on this clip can be a little bit low at times, so just to ensure that your sound is up high as well.
We got on with living, but we never forgot our little girl. Over the years, it has been so hard not knowing where she was at Christmas, on her birthday, or when my other children were starting school. Was she well? Was she happy? The years passed. Every year on her birthday, my sister would call to let me know that she was thinking of my little girl. My sister often accompanied me to visit the Pro Cathedral in Dublin to see a lady from the Rotunda Girls Aid Society, hoping that this time would I have any word or any news about the whereabouts of my little girl. She was never helpful. So one day my sister and I decided to go and look at the birth registers. We found records for 3 babies that were born on the same day. This was the start of our breakthrough.
Many years after she was taken from her, May was reunited with her daughter.
Some 37 years after she was taken from me, I finally met my beautiful daughter again. We hugged and cried and talked a lot. A wonderful couple had adopted her. They prayed for us every night as she grew up. They told her how special she was. She was loved and so happy. In the summer of 2003, she met our other children. We were finally all together in our home, and her adoptive parents also attended the weddings of 2 of our other children. Her adoptive parents were such warm people. Sadly, they died a matter of weeks apart, and I miss them so very much. Before I met my daughter, I attended a Bernardo's meeting one evening.
Okay, so I'll hand you over to Celine, who's going to talk to us a little bit about DNA within the search and reunion process. No, I'll just take on.
Oh, sorry, Chloe. I was on silent. Sorry
No
about that.
problem at all. No problem, Celine.
I'm chatting away to myself here.
No
Okay.
problem at all.
So
Thanks.
just our proviso, prior to me sharing this information, it's a breakdown of advantages and disadvantages with regards to DNA searching. And also to say that we are no experts on DNA searching, and your best option will be to check out the International Association of Genetic Genealogists, where you'll be able to find a list of registered genealogists who, if you so wish, will hopefully help you with your search. And I do know from speaking to some of our clients in the UK that some libraries can also offer support and facilities with regards to reading the matches and the DNA searches that come up when you register on some of these sites. You probably already know of a couple of these sites like ancestry.com or .uk or myheritage.com. So some of the advantages: DNA is useful, and in some cases, it might be the only way to search. For example, in the case where there has been a legal birth registrant, that is whereby the parents who raised a person are named on their birth cert and there was no adoption that took place, this might be the only way of finding who their birth family are. And it may be also the only way of searching where birth mothers have given false information, and where people can't otherwise be found, particularly where records don't contain information that will allow you to trace for your birth family. DNA can also be a way of accessing birth fathers, because very often birth fathers were not put on the birth certificates. A DNA search will give you the truth regardless of what the record or paper files say. It can be helpful in confirming your paper trails and information gathered from your files. A DNA search may also give you a family tree going back a long way into your roots, and it can be done anonymously. This can really be helpful for people to understand their identity. Some DNA searches can be faster than other modes of searching. There's no waiting lists, and people will feel more in control of the search, and it allows them to be proactive. Information can be uploaded to other sites to increase the chances and success of the search. DNA can be used to search for siblings, including others who might have been adopted or who are hard to find. There is nothing currently stopping you from using sites and contacting whoever you wish. It bypasses possible legislation or the need to sign statutory declarations. So the challenges of DNA searches. The DNA search process can be very complicated technically. So you need to kind of be able to manage things online, etc. And it can be hard to read some of the results that come up. It can also produce a lot of red herrings and dead ends. That's due to the fact that not everybody puts their DNA up on DNA search websites. It can be extremely time consuming, and it can also become a bit of an obsession. It can put you in contact with birth relatives very quickly. So this really needs to be managed because it can be overwhelming when you're put in contact with birth relatives quickly. And it may put you in contact with people that you do not wish to have contact with. It can put you in direct contact with people whereby it is really hard to pull back from. Some DNA websites engage false marketing and people are not aware what they're signing up for. Remember, genealogy websites are profit making and are focused on adding more users rather than concerned with what is ethical and what the databases are used for. Mistakes can be made or testing. For example, one company had to withdraw their claims that they could show medical issues in the DNA search. That was true. A DNA search can lead to false hope. It is expensive and it can add up. If you have additional tests or use the companies, or if you use a paid research assistant or genealogist, all this can be hard on your pocket. Trying to interpret the results can be difficult. Constant messages come in from the companies about new matches, and this can be confusing. Sometimes these matches can be distant relatives. You can't control the timing of when leads develop, and it may cause problems within families you are matched with by exposing secrets that have never been spoken to. What we're going to show now is a clip from Stacey Dooley's documentary where a woman was able to trace her family through DNA searching.
I was brought up in a very happy household. Although I knew I was adopted, it was nothing. That was my mum. I didn't know anything else. She was my mum. Mum and dad trying for a family but wasn't successful, so they went to see the priest. And the priest put them in touch with the adoption agency in Southport. Southport and Liverpool, a lot of Irish ladies came over for the adoption. So I've made up this story that she was an Irish lady. She came over, had me, and probably went back to Ireland.
What are you hoping to take from this entire experience? And if we're able to hand over information, how would that affect your life?
Probably a bit of a cliche, but will probably make me feel complete. And if my birth mum, she was alive, just that would be wonderful. It's quite exciting now, thinking, how is this going to go? What we're going to find out?
How often do you think about your biological mum?
I think on my birthday. Yeah, because I always used to think, if nothing else, she would have thought, yeah, I gave birth on that day. You would too, wouldn't you? Yeah, it would mean something.
So you've thought about her every single birthday?
Yeah, just quietly to myself.
So it's probably going to come as no surprise, but you come back as 93% Irish. Wow. And this was a period of time when it was incredibly difficult. Contraception was illegal in Ireland, abortion was illegal, even adoption was illegal in Ireland. And so there was about 2,000 women a year coming over from Ireland, often to places like Liverpool, because it's one of the nearest ports where they could put the children for adoption. So you were definitely not alone. Yeah. So definitely your parents are Irish. So I know that you were particularly interested in finding your birth mum. We got lucky. So your birth mum is Bridget. Bridget has 2 children. So
got you.
You have got younger half siblings.
Yeah. wrong question. She's still alive.
She is.
She is?
No.
Your mum's still alive.
Oh, flipping heck.
She lives in Ireland. She's in a care home. She's got dementia.
Oh.
But she's alive and they're looking after her. And actually your siblings are really excited to meet you. And actually they've written you a letter and they've asked me to pass it on.
Dear Margaret, hope this letter finds you safe and well. We are overjoyed to discover we have a sister. We are sad that our mother kept you a secret all of these years. Our mother was a very bubbly, outgoing person and loved her bright colours. She read a lot and liked the game of bingo. We are glad to hear you had a happy childhood and made a good life for yourself. We are all looking forward to meeting you. Welcome you into our family. It's lovely. It's just beyond words. You know, birth mum's still alive. How amazing is that? I wanted to know if she had a good life. And I know she has now, so that's great. Yes, so that's really good. I spoke to my sister first, and we were on the phone for, I think, nearly an hour. I said, I've always wanted a sister. And she said, I've always wanted a sister.
Okay, so what we're going to look at now is the fact that not all search and reunion stories are positive ones, in contrast to popular media representation, like Long Lost Families and Stacey Dooley's documentaries. Often we hear from birth parents and adopted adults that those programs very often are quite triggering because their stories are not the happy ever after that the media presents. And a variety of difficulties can arise during a search and reunion process. Sometimes the simplest thing can be that people don't get on, they don't get along together. Also, one of the issues could be that you discover that the conception and the birth story are really difficult to hear. For example, conception may have been due to incest or rape. So this can be really challenging. As we said before, do get support throughout this process. The birth mother might be wishing to keep the birth a secret and the adoption a secret. So often birth mothers won't come forward because of this. Birth families are not interested in meeting the adopted adult or are rejecting the fact that the adopted parent is their child. We come across this quite a lot with people with regards to not being accepted or not being acknowledged by particularly half siblings that their parents may have had a child before they came along as well too. You may also find out that multiple siblings had been born either before or after you, and these were also adopted. So what we come across a lot of the time are many adoptions that took place with the one birth mother. Birth mother stories and experience may be very difficult to hear. Meeting relatives from different socioeconomic backgrounds and privilege or lack of privilege can also be a challenge. It can be difficult on both sides. There may be no trace at all of who your birth family are, despite the records and despite DNA searches. The birth mother or birth father's name may not be complete on all the forms or documents, or may be inaccurate. This will really scupper your search. You may need to take time to consider the birth mother's current psychiatric or mental health, their current physical or sensory disabilities, or possibly addictions. They may also be demonstrating symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, which goes back to the time of their pregnancy and the birth, and also the separation. You may need to consider the birth mother's or father's age. Many could be in nursing homes or have dementia, as was in the previous video clip that you saw. There may be very limited records available. Additionally, there may be incorrect birth registration. As I mentioned earlier, this is whereby the parents who raised you are named as your birth parents, so there is no record of who the birth parents actually are. So I'm going to hand you back now to Chloe, and she's going to have a little bit of chat about self-care.
Thanks, Celine. So I suppose we've referenced the importance of self-care throughout the last few slides, and just, I suppose, some questions that we would regularly put to people throughout this journey. How do I recharge? So I suppose just to take time to really consider, what do I do for me? What can I take time out? Where can I take time out? And what can I say no to right now? Don't underestimate the emotional impact of this process. What do I do when I'm stressed? Can I recognize my stress triggers? And do I have a plan for self-care when I do? Might be as simple as going for a walk, listening to music, meet with friends, practice mindfulness. What do I do only for myself? How can I take time for me? Is there a group or a social activity that I can join that's just for me? Is there even 10 minutes in the day that I can set aside for me without any other distractions? What are my resources in my current reality? So my own coping skills, my self-care toolkit. What support services can I link in with? Are there any other peer groups I can join that I could hear about how maybe others with similar life experience have managed some of these journeys prior to me? And finally, who supports me? It's perhaps a partner, family members, friends, pets, even nature. So one strategy that you might find helpful when it comes to self-care is the one here that we've on screen. So taking a mindful snack. This slide, along with the previous one, will also both be put into the chat box there by Celine and can be downloaded for you to reference again. Just you'll be able to press download and save to your own computer any of the handouts within the chat box. Okay, so just before we finish and move on to some questions, we can look at here a message from Nicky Campbell. So some of you might recognise Nicky. He's one of the presenters of Long Lost Families, and he himself is an adopted adult. He's written a book called Blue-Eyed Boy, which may be of interest to some of you to look up after this if you'd like to hear a little bit more about his story.
Do you feel like when you met your biological mum, it's kind of solidified your belonging with your adoptive family? You know, you suddenly had more of a connection with your parents because you saw them for they were.
Yeah, that's a great question, because a really good question, because it's sort of confirmed everything and made sense. And because I'd had the question answered. A lot of people in Long Lost Families say, oh, but what if it's not a happy ending? I always say that, well, it is a happy ending, because anything else is a bonus. This person now has all the questions about their past. They've got a brand new past, but all those questions are answered, and they've met their birth mother or their sister or their brother or their father or their son, whatever. So now they know, and they won't be going through the rest of their life wondering. So I'd stopped wondering and wondering. I knew, and you come back, you come home, and it's a place you've never been to, but it's a better place.
Okay. So we'll have a look now and see if there's any questions that have come into the chat box, and we'll respond as best we can with any of those questions. Just to mention as well, after the webinar, I suppose first as the webinar ends and as you exit out of it, and then after the webinar as well, you'll be emailed a follow-up evaluation questionnaire. So we'd really appreciate if you could fill this out. It is anonymous, and it will just help us in planning any future content, and know, I suppose, any observations or critiques that you may have will be very helpful to know. Celine is going to pop in one final handout there into the chat box, and this is just a little bit about, I suppose, the contact information for the Birth History Service here in Barnardo's, Ireland, and ways of contacting us, just if you would like that little bit of extra support around, I suppose, emotionally around the process, particularly around search and reunion. Okay.
Okay, so Chloe, there was just one lovely comment there that says, "Thank you so much for sharing the information. It is so interesting, and I did not know all of this was happening." So thanks very much also for attending and for giving us that feedback.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you.
So if anyone else has any questions for either ourselves or the other panelists, if they'd like to turn on their screens as well, that'd be great. If anyone wants to pop anything into the Q&A box, please do. Another comment that has come in is well delivered and very informative. Thank you very much.
Again, I suppose just to mention, as the previous presenters had said as well, this has been recorded and will be available. So what we'll do is in some of that follow-up correspondence that we'll send out, we'll inform you, let you know when it's available online as well for everyone to access.
Another comment that has come in is ditto and great to have the support. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if that's it, if anybody else, the rest of the panelists want to say anything or share anything, final comments. You're on silent, Patrick.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course, I'm on mute 'cause I always forget. Listen, just a huge thank you to everyone who attended. We really hope that you got a lot out of this. It's great work with Bernardo's also, because what what ourselves and Bernardo's wanted to achieve was to give a real breadth of coverage about the Irish government's response to the institutions and what can be and what is out there for people. So thank you very much.
If we could also just maybe say a little thank you to Kieran behind the scenes, who has done loads of work setting this up, and round of applause for Kieran, and created one of the videos that you saw earlier as well. So there's a lot of work that goes into this. So thank you all for your lovely comments. It's nice to see that people have learned a lot from this.
Okay, we've got another comment saying, "Thank you, good information." Yeah.
Brilliant. And again, you'll have all of the contact information if anyone does want to get in touch or thinks of a question maybe in the coming days.
Okay, somebody has just put it in something in the chat box just to say to you, be careful if you use a search angel to work on your ancestry DNA results. Often they do not understand the Irish naming system. Interesting. I worked with someone who had been linked to an entirely the wrong family. We did find the birth father eventually. He had dementia, was living in America. Yeah, so the searcher did not actually declare that they were their child in order not to upset them. Yeah, so that would be a search angel. I suppose that could be potentially IA program. Yeah. Thank you for that share. Okay,
brilliant. So that will bring us to the end and to the close of the webinar. And thank you all very much for attending and listening today.